I have to go with some.
We were talking about something orange the last time we started.
At least we're not talking about anything inappropriate. Although that might make it spicier.
Or the ratings go up just a little bit more. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and for taking a half hour out of your Thursday evening to spend some time with Jamie and I in the lounge. I am Dana.
And I'm Jamie.
And we are super excited to have you here. Last week, we had a great conversation with Leanne from Mama Crush Marketing, talking all about mamapreneurs and how to try to organize yourself and do the career or career that you want. And got a lot of great tips out of that. And tonight, we have a very special guest. Her name is Stephie Predmore. I met her actually, it's got to be like 5 or 6 years ago almost. Or maybe, yeah, I think so. It was at a blogging conference, and she's a dollface, and she is being so kind as to open up to us about her adoption journey and all about how she has a beautiful little girl in her life now, her and her husband's life, of course. So I am going to bring her onto screen as soon as I can find where my little thing is. So welcome to Live in the Lounge. Hey, Stephie.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here. See, people beforehand did not get the chance to see your beautiful daughter, so we did hang with her.
You got that special little glimpse. Yeah, she was sitting here with me before my husband took her upstairs to put her to bed. So
cute. I just want to remind
extremely cute.
She is. No, she really is.
Apologize.
Was that an animal?
Yeah, that was my dog.
Okay. A dinosaur, an animal. I didn't know what that sound was.
Yeah, I apologize.
Oh no,
she
it's
heard
okay.
something outside and was like, "Wah!"
Hey, this is real life here. This is it. What happens? It happens. It's all good. I just want to remind everyone, if you're here, please say hi. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We'll try to get to them as we go. If not, I'll connect with Stephie after the show, and then we can get any questions that you have answered. I'm going to let Jamie roll into the interview questions because she's like super fabulous.
Oh, thanks, Dean. You're pretty good too. So Stephie, why don't you tell us, let's just start off and learning a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I'm Stephie. I live in Central Illinois. As you already said, I am the adoptive mama to a little girl named Eden. She is 1 year old. We have what I call a radically open adoption with her birth family. We're super open, see them all the time, just love them so much. And we have 2 big dogs and 2 cats. So we're the crazy animal people too. I love to cook. I have a food blog. My husband works in a restaurant. So we spend a lot of time talking and thinking about food in our house. I also have a podcast with one of my best friends called I'd Rather Stay In. We call it the podcast for cozy introverts. We talk about all sorts of topics, just sometimes just the 2 of us, sometimes with guests. Have a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, I do a whole bunch of different things, always working on some crazy project, but that's me.
For sure. No, I know. Oh, my cat came on and said, hi, cat. Hi. So you said how you have this beautiful baby Eden in your life. I don't even know how to like delve into this, but like, okay, so you decided, you and your husband decided you were going to adopt. What was your deciding factor?
Sure. So we ended up coming to adoption through an infertility journey. And adoption is something that we had kind of discussed and both thought about like separately before we were even dating. And it's something that we kind of always thought we might do. We just thought we would have biological children first. And so we go through this pretty long infertility journey. And for us, we knew that we did not feel like IVF was the right journey for us. And so we had decided that if all of the things to conceive naturally were not going to work, that adoption was where we felt like we felt like was going to be the right path for us. And that's what we ended up doing. We were a waiting family for 2 years. And over the course of that 2 years, we experienced 3 disrupted matches. So, in domestic infant adoption, which is what we did, you are chosen by an expectant mother who is considering an adoption plan for her child. And I think something that is not super well understood by a lot of people outside of the adoption community and by a lot of couples that are kind of coming into it or considering it, is that an expectant mother or expectant couple, they actually have to choose adoption twice. So they are considering adoption, they talk to a professional, they read through profile books, they select you as their child's hopeful potential adoptive parents. Right. But then after the child is born, every state has different laws when it comes to the amount of time that has to take place before relinquishment and what that looks like. But when it comes time to relinquish their parental rights, they have to choose adoption again. And so just because they have made this adoption plan does not necessarily mean that they are going to move forward with the adoption. They might choose to parent, and it is absolutely their right to choose to parent until they sign their termination of parental rights, until they have relinquished that right legally. They are the parent and they have the right to choose to parent. And so we were matched 3 times before Eden, and those mamas chose to parent for all sorts of different reasons. So that happened 3 times. And then our little girl was born, I think it was like 17 days after our 3rd disruption. So we were still sort of like kind of, awesome. Yeah. And I got a call on a Saturday afternoon. I was getting a manicure and they said, Mama is in labor in Wisconsin and has chosen you. And I said, and I quote, "You're shitting me." And our caseworker said, "I would never shit you." And we, drove up, and 5 hours later, we were in a delivery room when our now daughter was born. So that's just sort of a very high level recap of our journey.
Oh my God. I have all kinds of chills going up and down my body now. That's so amazing.
Yeah, it was a very wild experience.
Yeah. How did you prepare? I mean, it's got to be like the way you speak about it in such an understanding way about the right of, the parent, the natural parent. But I mean, how did you handle that, if you don't mind sharing?
No, of course. So the first one, we were matched very quickly after our very first match was very, very soon after we became a waiting family. It was like 6 weeks. So when you do your home study, so you decide to adopt, you start working with an agency or professional. You also have to do a home study. So yes, they do come to your home and make sure that you don't have like a giant pit in the floor or a mess lab in the basement or anything like that. But most of that home study is a lot of paperwork and a lot of questions that they're asking, and they want to, make sure that financially that you can support a child, and that you're emotionally ready and that your house is safe and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And during that process, many times there is an education requirement. Now, unfortunately, most of the time the education is sort of subpar. And our home study education was pretty subpar. And so the first disruption that we went through, I was not educated enough to really just be prepared for that eventuality and know how to handle it and all of that. And so after that happened, because of just my personality type, I really started digging in, and I started really getting connected with following some adoption accounts on Instagram in particular. And there's one account, in particular, her name is Ashley Mitchell. Her Instagram handle is Big Tough Girl, and she is a birth mama. And I have learned so much from her. And she, you know, does these stories and these posts, and she has a ton of free videos on her website, and she does all of these Instagram lives and just talks very candidly about her experience as, you can probably hear my daughter laughing with my husband upstairs. They have a really cute bedtime routine. And she talks very candidly about her experience as a birth mom and about the rights of expectant mothers and about open adoption and all of these things. And through following her, I got to follow other accounts and just really started digging in and learning and sitting with some of these like kind of tough pills to swallow as a prospective adoptive parent, that no child is yours until they are legally yours, that adoption does not mean a better life. It just means a different life.
Right.
There's a lot of things like that when you first hear them, especially because our society places so much emphasis on how adoption is beautiful, and they don't talk about how adoption is hard. And adoption only comes from brokenness. And you have to confront that, and you have to sit with that to do adoption well as a hopeful adoptive parent, as a prospective adoptive parent. You have to recognize that even in domestic infant adoption, there is trauma, and you have to be willing to work through that and understand that to really do it well, not just for your child, but also for their birth family. And so I really dug into that education, and in the process started sharing some of what I was learning. And it was very, very transformative for me to go through that and listen to all different sides, you know, birth parents and adoptees and fellow adoptive parents, and learn from all of them.
See, I think that that's so, I love the path that you took to really educate yourself and immerse yourself, and from all different angles, because I feel like it really prepared you, because you were, when you said society portrays adoption as, oh, this beautiful thing. I mean, I never thought of it as it comes from brokenness, and it, you know, it comes from that. So,
and it can be beautiful. There are beautiful adoptions and beautiful adoption stories, but we do our children and their birth families a disservice when we focus solely on the happy things. And we completely, because, you know, adoptees in particular have had their trauma erased, and no one wants to talk about it. And no one wants to talk about, you know, we want to paint adoptive parents as heroes, and, you know, we'll paint birth parents as heroes when they've chosen an adoption. But if they're a single parent, we may or may not be painting them as heroes. Like if they choose to parent, we may or may not be painting them as a hero. Like there's just all of this conflicting stuff. And it comes from, there's just decades and decades and decades of history in the adoption world that informs so much of adoption now. One of my favorite books about adoption is called The Girls Who Went Away. It's by Ann Fessler. And I recommend this to like practically everyone I talk to just in my daily life. But it is about what they call the baby scoop era. So the period between the end of World War II and the beginning and the passing of Roe v. Wade. And it talks about, and then, you know, those were the decades when unwed mothers were sent to maternity homes, and many of them were essentially forced to place their children for adoption. And they were told that they weren't worthy to parent their children, and they weren't even worthy to think about their children after they were placed for adoption. And so many of them never knew what happened to their children, or never reconnected with them. And this is a book of their accounts, and it recounts so many of these mothers' stories. And it is very hard to read, but it is really important to read, because so much of what happened during this time period has informed today's adoption industry. And so it is really important, you know, if you are considering adoption, or if you have an adoptee in your life, or you have a birth parent in your life, to sit with some of this hard stuff and some of this hard history, because it is really important, and we have to understand, right? We have to understand history, or we're doomed to repeat it. So it's really important to, this is a really important book in my opinion.
That is awesome. So when you were going along with your adoption journey, when did you decide, or what made you decide to do, maybe let's define open versus closed adoption.
Yeah, so open versus closed adoption kind of almost has a different definition than it used to. So, you know, back in the like girls who went away period, those were closed adoptions. And by closed adoptions, really the crux of what a closed adoption is that there is no sharing of information. Neither party knows anything about the other. That is what a truly closed adoption is. Now, it's sort of, that definition has transformed a little bit recently. Technically, basically all adoptions these days are open. It's just degrees of openness. But when we talk about closed adoptions now, what we're really talking about is more just that there is no contact and no real sharing of information. And so, and when we're talking about open adoptions, that can look like a lot of different things. It can look like that you send an email update once a month or every other month. It can be that you have, you know, in-person visits once a year. It could be that you talk on the phone or do FaceTime, you know, a few times a year. It could be that you are seeing each other. It could be like ours, where Eden's birth mom and I text basically all day, every day, and we see each other as much as we possibly can, and we have Thanksgiving together, and you know, like all of those types of things. There's a huge range, and it can be anywhere in between. And what the real important thing to know is that it's really important for the child to know where they come from, to know their biology, because yes, love can make a family, right? But we can't discount the importance of biology. Right. At some point, adoptees are going to want to know where they came from and their biology, and being able to know those pieces is really, really important. And, you know, the level of openness will depend on a lot of things. It'll depend on what the adoptive family is comfortable with. It also depends on the birth parents and where they're at in their healing journey. For some of them, they may go through periods where they're of silence, where it's too much to talk to or hear from their child's family. And then they may go through some, you know, counseling and some therapy and some healing, and feel like they're ready to start, you know, having open communication again, and that can ebb and flow. And so I think if you're thinking about adoption, it is really important to be open to openness. I think it is important to know what you're comfortable with, but also to know that every situation is different. And just because a situation, like your openness looks one way after the child is born and in that first year, things can ebb and flow and change, and being open to that, because
not just like
yeah, and we're not just looking at 1 year, we're looking at an entire lifetime. Yeah,
it's so like I mean I so appreciate just one for, you know, us to learn, but just how holistically you're thinking about this. And I imagine, you know, everyone's in a different place on their journey, but that this, you know, knowing that this approach and all these things to consider could just make it such a better experience,
right,
or more enriched experience for everyone.
Right.
It's pretty amazing.
And I'll tell you, I am a better person for knowing our daughter's family. We've met much of her extended family. Obviously, we're super close to like her immediate family. I'm a better person because I know them. I love them very, very much. I call her birth mom my sister mama. Like, we're super, super close. Her birth dad and my husband are like two peas in a pod, to the point that it's almost scary. They're like they're our closest friends. They're our family. We consider ourselves a family of 6 because we've got the 3 of us, and then her birth parents and her sister. And I feel like I am a better mother because I know them.
Mhm.
So I imagine that that's not always the case, right? Or people
It's
have
not
to,
always the
yeah,
case. And it's, I feel very lucky. Like we just clicked with them so
right.
much. So like immediately clicked with them. And that doesn't always happen. Like, and I think one of the things that my friend Ashley kind of taught me over the years is that you don't actually really have to like your child's birth mother. Like,
Mm,
but it's like we all have that relative that we don't really like, but they're
right.
still part of the family,
Right. You
right?
didn't have a choice in the matter, really.
Right. And so you don't have to like your child's birth
Right.
mother, but you do have to honor and respect her
I
in your
love
home.
that.
And
Mhm.
so it's really about how can you honor her as your child's birth mother? How can you honor her and respect her in her home? How can you, maybe you need to set boundaries. Setting boundaries is not a bad thing. Setting boundaries helps us love people better.
Right.
We all have to set boundaries in our lives with the people around us. It's no different in an open adoption relationship. And so even when it's a hard thing to navigate, it's really important to sit in that and figure out, what are the boundaries we need to set? How can we honor her, even if she's like not my favorite person?
Right.
Or even if I don't understand her choices or understand her lifestyle or any of those things.
That's so interesting. So we discussed like that there's a lot of hard and hurt and not so positive sunshiny things that come along with adoption. Let's say there's a couple just like you, pre-Eden, that are looking to adopt. Like where do they even start?
So I would say before you even start looking at professionals, start educating yourself. I have a workbook here. This is the Before You Adopt, and it is by a woman named Krista Jordan. She is an adoptive mom, and this is a great workbook. It sort of just walks you through some questions to ask both yourself and professionals around you. It'll talk through the different types of adoption. It talks through like what is leading you to adopt. Does your extended family know? All sorts of things like that. If you're considering a transracial adoption, are you prepared to become a multicultural, multiracial family? All sorts of things. And it's a really good just sort of starting point to work through. And you could even get a copy for both you and your spouse and kind of answer questions separately and then come together and talk about your answers. Like there's a few ways that you could kind of go about it. So I think that this is a really good resource and it's a good place to start. There's also, I am obviously very connected into the Instagram community. And there are a number of accounts that are really great to follow. And I can kind of shoot off a list to you guys afterwards if you want to, post that in the comments later. But there's a lot of Big Tough Girl, Kindred and Co. There's several adult adoptees who I think are really great to follow, and they're great places to start to kind of just get some knowledge. Several of us in the community do one-on-one advising. So I do one-on-one advising with prospective adoptive parents, and folks who are considering an adoption. I know that my friend Ashley does as well. And then I have a couple of adult adoptee friends who do as well. And so, kind of investing in some one-on-one advising and mentoring and, kind of learning from all of these sides of adoption, I think is a really great place to start. And through that, you'll kind of start to figure out like, okay, this is the route that we want to go. And you'll kind of start to figure out like, okay, here are some things that we should probably be asking any professionals that we're considered working with, things like that, because, you have to vet and interview professionals and make sure that they're doing things ethically, and no professional is going to be perfect. But there's definitely some like things that you can kind of watch out for, and doing that education will help you figure that out along the way.
Completely makes sense. Completely makes sense. So talk a little bit about your, so you work full time, but you also, like you said, this new business was morphed from your adoptive experience. So talk a little bit about it, because I think it's so important to hear it from the horse's mouth, to talk to people that actually were immersed in situations, in the adoptive process.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I work in marketing full time. I even do, some freelance work on the side. And then I actually started really sharing our story when we were still going through infertility. And I just kind of reached a point where I was like, I'm tired of keeping this a secret. And maybe if I share our story, it'll resonate with somebody else. If it resonates with one person, then sharing it was worth it. And it resonated with a lot more than one person. And so when we started our adoption journey, I sort of felt the same way. I'm going to be as open as I can be without, being too open about, any other person's story. And so, kind of shared our ups and downs along the way, and shared the things that I was learning along the way, and really, getting connected into this Instagram community. And, after a while, this past summer, after we'd adopted Eden, and a couple of my friends in the community, they said to me, they're like, you need to do advising. Like, you need to do some one-on-one advising, because we see a need in the community for the ability to do more in-depth work with adoptive parents who have done it well. And this was coming from some of my adoptee friends and my birth mom friends who I just respect the hell out of. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I should do. And so, I started that as sort of another side thing. And it could, because I do talk to so many families in my Instagram DMs and, the comments in my posts, but you can only, and I do, a lot of Instagram lives and things like that, but there's only so much that you can do. And sometimes, the things that I've discovered are that some families just really need to sit down and hash it out. They've got questions about either the process as a whole, or they've got questions about how to navigate their open adoption, or they're dealing with adoptive parent guilt, and how do I manage that? And, just sitting and really spending an hour having a video call conversation with someone is so helpful for, so many people. And so that is something that I have been offering since I think July. And I love the families that I work with, and some of them have, kind of become friends, and I love hearing where they're at in their journeys now and all of those things. So it's been a really fun and rewarding and hard and all the things endeavor.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty, when I just think about how little I knew coming into this conversation, and hearing just how natural it is for you, and that you had this conversation with your husband about adopting and your experience, and how thorough your research is and your approach, what value you must add to people that just really are kind of in the dark and don't know how to navigate. So
thank you. Yeah. I think we all start off sort of where do I start? It's very overwhelming. And when you Google about it, you find information from adoption professionals, and they are going to be selling it to you in a very specific way, because quite frankly, they want your money. And so, to be able to educate and I know that it's a small audience that I'm educating to in the scheme of, community as a whole. But, if I can help one family do adoption better, if I can help them in any small way, then I feel like the work that I'm doing, is important. I just did a live earlier this week with my friend Ashley on adoptive parent guilt, which is a real thing. You aren't prepared. No one can emotionally, no matter how much education you do, no one can prepare you for the experience of walking out of a hospital with another woman's child while she leaves empty-handed. Right. Nothing prepares you for that. And there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. And a lot of adoptive parents don't talk about it because we feel like we must be the only one experiencing this, or, you know, I'm the most privileged one in adoption. I got the baby. What do I have to be like feeling bad or guilty about? And so I had so many people messaging me after saying like, you were saying exactly the way I was feeling, and I thought I was alone, and now I know I'm not. And
Right.
that's why I do what I do, because I can help somebody do it better for their children, and also let them know they're not alone as they're figuring out how to do all of this. We're all just figuring it out on our own. I'm still learning.
Right. But you're in the gift of sharing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So Stephie, how can people find you?
I am on Instagram at Stephie Predmore, my name. My website is stephiepredmore.com. So if you want to learn more about my advising, that's my website. And then you can follow me on Instagram for tons of education and cute Eden pics and all that kind of stuff. And I, you know, always talk about random crap in my stories too. So all of the things.
I'm a big fan, and I'm definitely, Eden, by the way, is a fashionista. So
I love dressing her up. And I mean, I guess it's probably even exacerbated just because she was born right before a pandemic hit. And so we been at home for the last year. So what else am I going to do? I'm going to dress up my baby real cute.
Yeah,
adorable.
For sure. I can't believe it's already over a half hour. Thank you so much for being here,
ladies.
It was wonderful to talk with you. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Steph, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.